Hello everyone and welcome back to Nathrandir's Guide to Everything, and welcome to the top 10 monsters from the new monster manual, or should I say the top 10 glow-ups from the new monster manual. In this list there are a few new monsters, though most of them are variations of existing ones, as well as some significant changes to older monsters that have completely changed them and just made them super effective. I say completely changed. They're still the same monster, but changed them enough that it's worth mentioning. Just a heads up, if there are any interruptions, it is because I do have a poorly dog, my puppy Moose here. He's not very well at the moment, so if anything changes, that's probably why. Without further ado though, let's jump into the top 10 monster glow-ups for the new monster manual. The way we're going to do this is first just do a little bit of lore about each creature, and then we'll go into the new things and then the updated things from the old stat block that have made it but may have changed. Hope that makes sense. First up, we have the Arcanaloth, a fox-like fiendish entity. All Yugoloths are fiendish manifestations of wickedness and greed, though Arcanaloths bend their considerable intellects towards hoarding and exploiting secrets. Arcanaloths possess considerable spellcasting prowess, but often disguise themselves with magic. A theme across all of these monsters is that the artwork has had a significant update and a glow up pretty much across the board, and the Arcanaloth is no exception. I'll pop up the old one and then the new artwork on screen at some point here. They are considered the Yugoloths of magical manipulation, so now let's just talk about some of the updates to their stat block. So a couple of the main updates to this sheet is that it's no longer an action to teleport with an Arcanaloth. They could go 60 feet, I believe. Now they can just, as a bonus action, teleport 30 feet to somewhere they can see. So that just gives them a lot more options. They didn't even really have a bonus action before. So that's a fantastic change just for mobility of these creatures. Also, as a reaction, they can now cast Counterspell at will, as many times as they like. So very strong. And really leans into the spellcasting prowess that they have. So, but a strange change, but I guess this is to go in with the new stat blocks with a little bit simpler, a bit more easy to run. The spell list that they have has been significantly reduced, though all the mainstays have still made it through. At will, they can cast Alter Self, Detect Magic, Identify Mage Hand, and Prestidigitation. And once a day each, they can do Contact to the Plane, Detect Thoughts, Dimension Door, and Mind Blank. Now, you'll notice there isn't really any aggressive spells amongst those, but there's a good reason for that. So let's talk about the thing that's new with the Arcanaloth. So a new trait that it has, along with the things it had before, which is magic resistance, it has the Soul Tome. The Arcanaloth has a magic tome. While holding or carrying the tome, the Arcanaloth can use its Banishing Claw action. The tome is something that can be attacked, though it is immune to necrotic, poison, and psychic damage, and it regains all its hit points at the end of every turn. But it turns to dust if it's reduced to 0 on a turn, so it is something that your players could target. However, let's talk about this Banishing Claw feature, which is a huge change to the creature. So the Banishing Claw mixed with the Soul Tome is essentially the banishment spell, but it's a melee attack that has to happen, so the Arcanaloth literally grabs the person, shoves them in the book. If they fail a charisma save of 17 3 times, they are trapped in that demi-plane forever until the book or the Arcanaloth is slain or destroyed. Not only that, these guys are now powerhouses at a distance. Like I said, they kind of lost any aggressive spells they had, but they did gain a Fiendish Burst feature, which is average damage of 31 necrotic damage, which is just a ranged spell attack, basically. So these things are now super mobile. They can run up to you, banish you to a tome, teleport out, and then, dare they, action plane shift the next turn and take themselves out with your friend potentially trapped in the book. Much more flavorful, much more unique as a monster, and a huge upgrade on what it was before, which was just a fox that could cast some powerful spells and hit you with its claws. Now it has a lot more flavor. I really love these changes. Next up on the list, we have Sphinxes, which have had a huge overhaul. And I've got to just throw it out the gate straight away. The artwork is absolutely phenomenal for all of these new monsters. We'll go through them kind of in an order here. So there is the Sphinx of Wonder, which is designed to be more of a companion to a party, I think, a very small, wondrous creature. They have been now put into the Celestial category as well. So let's have a look at the lore for these a little bit more. So there are 3 new kinds of Sphinxes: the Sphinx of Secrets, the Sphinx of Lore, and the Sphinx of Valor. Now they go up in power level in the order I just mentioned there. So now we start with the Sphinx of Secrets, which is a CR8 creature. Then we go up to CR11 for the Sphinx of Lore, and then CR17 for the Sphinx of Valor. So just a line here about the Sphinx of Secrets. They are commonly associated with sites of great magic or learning. These immortal beings often outlive such locations, though They might protect a site's ruins as they continue their own studies. Sphinxes of secrets, really hard to say, fiercely guard their dwellings and research. Their main ability, you might say, outside of a few utility spells like remove, curse, and locate object, which makes them a huge boon for a player that wants to befriend a creature like this, perhaps, is the Curse of the Riddle. It's an intelligence saving throw of 15 for whoever becomes affected on a creature the Sphinx can see within 60 feet. On a failure, they take some psychic damage, and the target is cursed with a riddle. The cursed target has disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls. In addition, if the target takes the magic action, it must succeed on a 15 intelligence, or that action is wasted. The creature instead can make another study action to make another intelligence check to solve the curse of the riddle that's affecting it so they can act freely again. A really cool way to just really put an end to any threatening spellcasters around. And it's no pushover. It has 136 hit points, can fly 60 feet, and its claws do an average of 13 slashing damage and then 7 radiant damage on top of that. 2d8 plus 4 plus 2d6. So no slouch for sure. Let's move on to the next level up, which is the Sphinx of Lore. Sphinxes of Lore each know a great secret and protect it at all costs. So prior to this, in the previous edition, we had the Gyno Sphinx and the Andro Sphinx, which was kind of laid out like a female and then a male Sphinx. The male Sphinx was the stronger one. The female Sphinx was kind of just a beast that could fly, didn't really have anything unique about it other than a few utility spells. Now they've leaned into the Sphinx of Lore being more lore focused. It is depicted as that kind of Gyno Sphinx character from what I can tell, but now it has received a mind-rending roar, which is a new feature pulled inspiration from the previously Andro Sphinx, now the Sphinx of Valor. Quite confusing, I'm sorry. The mind-rending roar is kind of like a breath weapon, recharges on a 5/6. It's a wisdom save of 16. Each enemy in a 300-foot emanation originating from the Sphinx takes 10d6 psychic damage and has the incapacitated condition until the start of the Sphinx's next turn. So a huge way to just completely disable everybody in a party, potentially, depending on when you come up against. CR11, DC 16, probably quite savable. Wisdom saves are quite popular. But once a day as well, it can do Dispel Magic, Legend Lore, Locate Object, Plane Shift, Remove Curse, and Tongues. Every creature seems to know Plane Shift. That's like above CR 10. I don't know what that's about, but I guess they're not from the material planes, so it makes sense they can go back and forth. Anyway, the Sphinx of Lore makes sense. It is a legendary creature also, so it does have some resistances. 3 on a normal day, 4 in its lair. It's worth noting that this creature and the Sphinx of Valor have the same legendary actions as well, which is an Arcane Prowl, which means it can teleport up to 30 feet and then make a claw attack, so very mobile too, as well as the Weight of Years, which is a Constitution saving throw of 16. One creature the Sphinx can see within 120 feet. On a failure, the target gains 1 exhaustion level. Additionally, they appear 3d10 years older. It can't take this action again until the start of its next turn, so you can just age someone into oblivion. It makes sense, I guess. But that is the Sphinx of Lore, kind of replacing the Gyno Sphinx. Next up, we have the kind of top tier end of this, which is the Sphinx of Valor. Now, they have those same features in the legendaries, which is Arcane Prowl and Weight of Years, but they have kept their Roar feature, which they can do 3 times a day. And it's a strange mechanic I've not really seen before in any other monster, where these things happen in sequence. So the first Roar of the day that they do, the DC 20 on these, by the way, for the Sphinx of Valor, absolutely huge. It's a 500-foot emanation. All creatures have the frightened condition for a minute, and it doesn't look like they get to save on that. So best of luck after it's affected them. The second Roar, the target has the paralyzed condition, which is just insane. They can save at the end of each of their turns for that one. And so the third Roar is another 500-foot emanation with an average of 44, 8d10, thunder damage, and the target has the prone condition. So huge, just damaging abilities, as well as the fact that the claw on this thing does 4d6 plus 6 for an average of 20. Like I said, it can do that Arcane Prowl. It could also buff itself in theory with a Hero's Feast. So a huge boon to a party that's allied with this creature, but this is a force to be reckoned with now. Now, it did have these Roar abilities before, but they've all been updated just to make them a little bit easier to use and read. Next up, we have the Erinyes, an entity of the 9 hells. Arguably the best artwork glow up, I think. Again, I'll pop them up on screen. I think these ones are worth showing a comparison for. Absolutely incredible looking this time around. A real threat. It's actually funny, in my current campaign, they just my party have just encountered a few Erinyes, so really cool to be able to role play them and just say what they look like. They have a couple of new things which just make sense, quite frankly. Erinyes, also known as Furies, are winged devils clad in fiendish armor. These fallen angels exact a merciless form of divine justice. They just look awesome. Before, they had very generic sword, bow attacks. Really generic, really plain. They were just a fiend, quite warrior type thing. Now they have a little bit more about them. I see them as like a Wonder Woman character. They always had the whip in the artwork, but it never really was explained what it's for. And it's kind of like a magic entangling truth whip. That's how I would like to play it anyway, basically. They have a withering sword, which is just their melee to hit, so they have hellish weapons. It's not stated on every stat block now like it was before. They just do. They are fiends. They have slashing damage plus 2d8 slashing damage, plus 2d8 necrotic damage. So they're hitting hard out the gate too. 24 average damage just on a melee attack. Not only that, they have their entangling rope feature, which requires a magic rope, and it says that because it does have an AC and hit points, though it does have 90, so pretty good amount of hit points. They can wrap this around a creature with a strength save of 16 within 120 feet. Ridiculous. That creature takes some force damage, and it has the restrained condition until the rope is destroyed, or it uses a bonus action to release the target, or the Erinyes uses the entangling rope feature again. So you can just lock somebody down pretty much permanently if you wanted to. But yeah, the main glow up here being the artwork, and definitely more flavor to what we see, the gear that this creature has. Awesome changes. Next up, we have the Empyreans, which before, I've never ran an Empyrean. They're kind of depicted as just this Herculean type angel character. It didn't, even the artwork put me off. The stat block, very uninspiring before. And it hasn't changed much, but it's changed enough and had more flavor. Now the artwork is much more emotive, that now I really want to use one. Empyreans are idealized human-shaped beings of godly power. These are CR 23 creatures. They are just below gods. These are like demigod level power characters, I guess you could say. Now, there are two sides to this story. We don't need to go into them. The stat blocks are the same, basically. They can switch between radiant and necrotic damage as they like. But now there is not only just like an angelic Empyrean, but there is also a fiendish Empyrean, which makes sense. Empyreans' existences are fundamentally influenced by their patrons and their connections to the heavenly deities of the upper planes or the lower planes, respectively. They do have free will, but as they are shaped by a particular deity, usually they will often share the same values. Updates first. As a legendary action, they could always do Shockwave of Glory, but it's less just Unga Bunga do damage, knock them prone. Now it's got much more flavor to it. So before, this was just flavored as Empyreans only had a maul ever. Really super uninspiring. And this is a Shockwave of Glory, 30 for emanation, so they do something to the ground. It's 68 force damage. Any target that fails a DC 23 con save is also knocked prone. They can also use their Divine Ray, which is a ranged attack roll action, as a legendary action. And they also now have Bolster, which has been changed slightly from before and made just better. The Empyrean gains 10 temporary hit points. The Empyrean and each ally within 30 feet of it gain advantage on all D20 tests until the end of the Empyrean's next turn. So really broken and very strong as an ally. Advantage on everything. Kind of ridiculous. One of the best changes is actually a new one to this. So rather than, again, like I mentioned, they just had a maul before, very uninspired. Now it just says sacred weapons. You can flavor this however you want. It has a really cool mechanic, which I've not seen before, and I've not seen it occur in any of the monster in the manual. And it's literally opened my eyes to something I never even thought to do. It has this optional resistance stun mechanic as a part of it. So let me show you, let me read this out. It's a melee attack roll plus 17 to hit, never mind the damage, 31 force damage average, insane. And the target has the stunned condition until the start of the Empyrean's next turn. Full stop. The target can choose not to be stunned, in which case it takes an extra 21 force damage that bypasses resistance or immunity. That's a great way to get around stun. Like stun is, I kind of always avoid creatures that have the stun condition as part of their stat block because it just feels bad for the player. There's no counter to it. Like you could say, yeah, buff yourselves better so you succeed on the save, but it feels strange to say that, and I think this is huge. I would use this against anything other than like a power word stun because that's what that spell is for, and I would never make my players use it. I would just accept the stun. But coming from NPCs towards players, I feel like this is huge. You can choose not to be stunned, but just take more damage. It's kind of a trade-off. So whatever the average damage is of the usual attack, it's half again if you choose to succeed on it. Oftentimes, I imagine players will go for that rather than potentially take a just advantage against them for an entire turn, skip their turn kind of thing. Kind of awesome. Another change that's new here. The artwork's a huge globe. I've kind of mentioned that already. They've removed most of the damaging spells from the Empyrean and made it just more of a, I guess they just have, it was a lot of the monsters, a very generic weapon that you can flavor how you like, and a generic range divine attack. And I keep saying generic like it's a bad thing. It's a good thing, honestly. It just gives you more options. You could also just homebrew if you want a spellcaster type one, just throw some spellcasting stuff in there. Though you've got to be careful of the CR because they're already very strong. Let's move on. Next up, we have another fiend. It is the Rakshasa, a fantastic creature with loads of flavor from prior. But I think the updates to this creature have made it even better, quite frankly, including this awesome artwork, which I'll throw up now. They are masters of manipulation. Rakshasas infiltrate communities to claim positions of power. While disguising their true natures, they kidnap victims and indulge their insatiable hunger for flesh. So really fun creatures. They are super intelligent and scheming, but also they just want to eat things. Kind of fair. They lost the True Seeing and Dominate Person spells, and they just have True Sight now. Still just as strong. The fact that they lost Dominate Person, I guess they had to balance the stat block somehow because they have a few new things. One of the coolest things is the vulnerability to piercing damage from weapons wielded by a creature under the effects of a Bless spell. Super specific, but I love how specific that is. How hard to figure out, but awesome. Really, really love that. I wish more creatures had these kind of specific resistances. They have a feature called Greater Magic Resistance, which previously was just spells of a 6th or lower just do not affect them. This has changed slightly, and I can't decide whether it's better or worse. I think, well, let you be the judge. Tell me what you think in the comments. The Rakshasa automatically succeeds on saving throws against spells and other magical effects, and the attack rolls of spells automatically miss it. Without the Rakshasa's permission, no spell can observe the Rakshasa remotely or detects its thoughts, creature type, or alignment. So they're kind of invisible. Not invisible, you know what I mean? Like insight-wise, they're kind of invisible unless they choose not to be. Automatically succeeds on saving throws. So now the 6th or lower thing's gone. They just succeed on everything. But that still means like Fireball, still get half damage, etc. But anything with a ranged attack automatically misses. Now, I feel like this makes spellcasters, they can engage. They just have to go aggressive with the damage, and I have no idea how this only puts them at a CR 13. I think that is, that is pretty damn high, but like this could be your BBEG for a campaign for sure. But I don't know, kind of crazy. They've retained their cursed touch feature. Basically, when they hit with a melee attack, the creature is cursed, and they go no benefit from a short or long rest while they are still cursed. So these creatures are just absolutely fiendish, for lack of a better term. They also now have the Baleful Command action, which I think is why they've lost some of their spellcasters, specifically the Dominate Person. Now they have a command instead. It's kind of like a breath weapon, so it recharges on a 5/6. It is a Wisdom save of 18. Each creature in a 30-foot region emanating from the Rakshasa takes 8d6 psychic damage, average of 28, and the target is frightened and incapacitated until the start of the Rakshasa's next turn. So for being like disguising themselves stealthy, they have all these offensive abilities, and they're like basically immune to spells. Crazy good. And just this very specific weakness that they have with this piercing damage from Bless is awesome. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. The lore they've added in, by the way, for these, so you can kind of spot them with other devils. They're not just animal humanoids, is they always have like one thing that's weird about them. Like in the artwork, maybe I could show it and zoom in. The hands are backwards on the creature, and they have these strange physical oddities, and that's how you spot a Rakshasa. Next up, we have something else that I'm really, really excited about, and there's so many changes here. I actually can't go into everything because this video would be longer than it's already going. Cultists. Cultists, I always thought was super underwhelming. They are now not underwhelming. There is kind of a cultist base stat block for every kind of entity that they might worship, which is fantastic. They also now kind of have a boss monster in the Cultish Hierophant, which is a CR10 cultist. So fantastic. They have Jalazi's Storm of Radiance that they can cast once a day, which does thunder damage, I think, and force damage, and blinds and deafens creature in the vicinity. So you could just flavor this as anything, really. But these would be the people that are closest to their patron on a cult level, without being, you know, empowered, fiendish or angelic, or whatever way you want to put it. They have a very good melee attack that does an average of 30 damage, as well as a radiant ray that they can just shoot out. So really, really powerful creatures. But the most things that are exciting to me are the now types of cultists that you can have. So they have added in the aberrant cultist, the death cultist, and the elemental cultist, as well as the fiend cultist. So now you have a cultist stat block for every kind of enemy that you might encounter. So, you know, early on in a campaign, when you discover this cult that's worshipping the big thing, these are perfect to throw in. So, for example, the aberrant cultist might worship creatures such as an aboleth or a mind flayer, or they may worship something from the far realm like Hadar. A death cultist, kind of what it sounds like, undead. So think a Serarak, Orcus, Vecna, that kind of thing. Elemental cultist, I don't need to explain that one. They worship elemental things, and as well as the classic ones like the fiendish ones. So now they're not all in one thing, they all have different abilities. So let's start with the fiendish cultist here. First of all, they just have access to very high damaging fire spells. They have access to Scorching Ray as well as Fireball at level 6, which is kind of monstrous, to be honest. They're depicting as wielding a packed axe, which kind of goes in with the kind of devilish nature of them, I guess. Devilish, demonic, a bit more kind of on the front line. But as well as the Fireball at level 6, they can cast Scorching Ray at level 5. In addition, they have a reaction of Hellish Rebuke that they can do at will, basically. So huge. That doesn't take up any spell slots. They can just set you on fire every time you attack them. The Elemental Cultist kind of just makes sense with what it has. When it attacks, it can choose a damage type to hit you with. So this would make sense if they're perhaps worshipping. You kind of could go down the Tiamat route with this as well, or the Princes of Elemental Evil, or if they're just aligned with a particular plane, I guess you could say. So yeah, with both their ranged and melee attacks, and I guess I should say all of these cultists kind of follow a similar thing. A couple of spells, a unique reaction, and their attack could deal what you think they would do. So they have an elemental flail and an elemental claw, which is a ranged attack roll that they can use. They can also choose the damage type of that. As a reaction, they do elemental absorption, which is the absorb element spell basically, but it's not listed as the spell, so it can't be counterspelled. This gives the cultist resistance to the damage type it's about to take, as well as gains 10 temporary hit points, so you can just nullify some of that. The Death Cultist, very, very similar, deals slashing and necrotic damage with its attacks. It has Speak with Dead and Thaumaturgy prepared, and a bonus action, it can use a Spirit Whale feature, which is recharges on a 5/6. It's a wisdom save. Each creature within 20 feet of this cultist takes 46 psychic damage and has the frightened condition. So really, really cool. Finally, the Aberrant Cultist, again, very, very similar. It's taking some stuff from the Mind Flayer here. It has tentacles as a melee attack that deal psychic damage as well as slashing, and if it's a larger, smaller creature, they are grappled and restrained. They can also use a Mind Rot feature, which is not a spell, it's just a magical effect, I guess. Wisdom save 15. On any creature you can see within 90 feet, they take 2768 psychic damage, and they have the poisoned condition, which is awesome. The Aberrant Cultist also has Counterspell that it can use twice a day as a reaction. So that's a brief overview of all these cultists, and there's some awesome artwork of a couple of these creatures coming together and fighting, so I'll throw that in here as well. Next up, I wanted to mention a underused monster type, I think, and one that seriously needed a glow up, one I didn't expect. I didn't see this until very late into preparing for this video, is the Revenants. Now, Revenants were just undead creatures that had a purpose basically before. The stat block for the main one hasn't really changed too much, but what I wanted to go into was this creature they've added, a higher CR than the normal one, which is a Haunting Revenant. Haunting Revenants possess ruins and forsaken places connected with their deaths, such as abandoned buildings, wrecked ships, or junk heaps. These Revenants lurk in plain sight, waiting for foes to come near, then trap their victim with their massive bodies. So the depiction for the artwork for this, which is awesome, is essentially like a haunted house with a face. So I'll just throw the artwork up, you'll see it. It's immune to pretty much every condition. I think it might be every condition. It has true sight. It's a gargantuan undead. It's just crazy and awesome. I absolutely love it. Imagine accidentally walking into this house, and that's the kind of thing I'm a bit confused about with it. It doesn't actually say whether the thing that... It doesn't say whether you could walk into this. It says it would just attack you when you come near. So I'm really not sure how that works. You could flavor it however you like. But get this. Its trait is that it's a haunted zone. So it's a con save 17. Any creature that casts a spell while inside the Revenant's space fails. The spell just fails. So if you can't succeed in a con save 17, the spell fails. Doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter what level it is, it just fails. Crazy, really good start. So you could lure your players into a building, shipwreck, whatever it might be. They try to cast anything and it just fails. And then you see that it comes to life and it attacks them. But here's the thing. It has this action, one of its actions, which is Invitation, which you can use once per turn, as well as its Object Slam. We'll get to that in a minute. That's just damaging poltergeist stuff. It's a Charisma save. Each creature in a 60-foot cone gets teleported into the Revenant space and is swallowed. A swallowed creature has total cover against attacks and other effects outside of the Revenant. While the Revenant has hit points, a swallowed creature can leave the Revenant space only by using magic that enables planar travel, such as plane shift. Now, is this not mental for a CR10 creature? Am I going crazy here? This feels so strong. It doesn't say that they can't damage it, but how does that work? So you walk into a space you're already in, so then it can't use its invitation feature. Instead, it just pummels you with objects from inside it, right? And all your spells fail. So really, really cool. You could fight this house. It has 200 hit points, so no slouch again. But this could be so deadly if one particular character gets taken in and the rest basically don't know how to save them, while they just, I guess, slowly die inside the Revenant space. Weird stat block. Kind of love it. Next up, and I think we're up to number 8 here. I haven't been doing the numbers, which I probably should have been. All of the dragons had a glow up. I think the biggest one, the one I'm most impressed with, and the one I want to now run the most, is a blue dragon, specifically adult and ancient. Firstly, artwork, my God, chef's kiss. Whoever did the dragon artwork in this, I mean, we can probably find out, but I don't have time for that personally. Whoever the folks art wizards that did all the dragon artwork, thank you very much. It's awesome. You really get a feel for what they're about. So ancient dragons are arrogant and imperious. They are the chromatic dragons that crave control and collect followers like other dragons hoard treasure. So you'll often see them commanding armies and such. They want to be feared by nations. That's kind of where they draw their power from. That's what they're all about. Their new features, all the dragons, like I said, have a overhaul, but the new features to the chromatic dragon are, firstly, is Cloaked Flight. And this is a legendary action, so it can be used in between turns. The dragon uses its spell casting to cast invisibility on itself. Then it can fly up to half of its fly speed. The dragon can't take this action again until the start of its next turn. So it just flies, disappears, comes back on its turn, lightning breaths you, ends its turn, wait till you get something off on it, and then just goes invisible again. It's just, I love it so much, and it really makes them feel like an absolute battlefield menace. Can you imagine coming against an army with a blue dragon doing this kind of stuff? And not only that, let me tell you more. Also, as a legendary action, it can do Sonic Boom. The dragon uses spell casting to cast the Shatter spell only at level 3. The dragon can't take this action until the start of its next turn, blah, blah, blah. It also it retains its tail swipe, so it can use an attack in between turns as 2. It has 3 legendary actions, 4 within its lair, so you do not want to fight it on its own ground. It doesn't need any more, trust me. But this is just like I mean, I just love it. Like, it just sonic booming you from a distance, shattering your armor, shattering the surroundings, just peppering you from a distance. Let's not forget that an ancient blue dragon has a lightning breath saving throw of 23, 120 foot long, 10 foot wide line, 16 d10 lightning damage. These things are going to be absolutely monstrous. Also on its turn, it can just do invisibility and cast shatter. So not only now are they attached to legendary actions, they can just do that. They have spell casting in their kit. I just think, honestly, with this as well, let me just read out its multi-attack first. It makes 3 rend attacks, each dealing an average of 29 damage, a mix of slashing and lightning. It can do 3 of those or replace one with the shatter spell. So it's just an absolute monster. And I mean, I guess you expect it to be, but of all the changes to dragons, chromatic wise, I think this one, with the green dragon in a close second because of its new spellcasting prowess as well, I think this takes the cake. Next up, we have another dragon. This time we're going down the metallic route though, and I really want to just throw in honorable mentions to the copper and brass dragon, which both artwork incredible, and they've had some amazing changes. We don't have time to talk about those now, but we do have time to talk about the silver dragon specifically, which I think has had the best glow up. The gold dragon goes without saying, it's kind of in a different class, I think, but the silver dragon, artwork wise, incredible, and the changes, I love them. Let's have a look. So silver dragons, you would find them mostly allied with heroes and armies, probably going against blue dragons quite a lot. They defend communities, allies, encourage them to perform deeds worthy of legend. That's what a silver dragon values. So first, let's talk about the legendary actions again, because this is where a lot of the changes have come into dragons. They can use the chill effect. They use their spell casting to cast Hold Monster. Hold Monster. Paralyze somebody, basically, on the battlefield. Crazy. I feel like broken. I don't know. Really strong and a huge change to how this monster plays. I absolutely love it. It can also do Cold Gale, which I guess is kind of half of a breath weapon, but it's kind of like a... I guess I would imagine they flutter their wings and it has an emanating of cold to it. 60 foot long, 10 foot wide line. The target is pushed 30 feet away and takes a bunch of cold damage. And these, again, legendary actions, save of 23, pretty crazy. And it also has Pounce. So as opposed to a chromatic dragon can just do an attack, this thing can move up to half its speed and make a rend attack. Monstrous. CR23 creatures, let's go. It's retained its breath weapons from before, so it has a just damaging cold breath as well as a paralysis breath, which of course makes it just so strong. Its multi-attack has changed slightly. It can make 3 rend attacks, same as the chromatics, or it can replace one with either the use of paralyzing breath or it can use the ice knife spell. So again, just more options to play the dragon. It's not just a one-trick pony, kind of as they were before. So the cold breath has to recharge, but it can use its paralyzing breath as much as it wants, which is just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Not only that, the spellcasting prowess. Once a day, it can use Control Weather, Ice Storm at level 7, Teleport, and Zone of Truth. Less exciting, but those first 3, my goodness. This thing is just insane. And I love all these changes. Finally, last up on the list at number 10, we have the Vampire Umbral Lord. And I love this change. As someone that's, I say recently, in the last couple of years, completed the Strahd campaign, I kind of wish Strahd's stat block had a few more unique things like this does. Firstly, we did this game in one of my previous videos with cutting down the stat block sizes. A vampire stat block has 1,021 words in it. Now, the Vampire Umbral Lord, which arguably has more going on and more features. In fact, pause the video here and you can guess what that number is. Guess what the new amount of words is on the stat block is. I'll give you a second. It's 515. So literally cut in half. And there is arguably more here. Ridiculous. So what are Vampire Umbral Lords? Well, Vampire Umbral Lords embrace their ties to the darkness from whence they came, devoting themselves to sinister powers in exchange for access to forbidden magic. So they're kind of a bit more spellcastery, though they are described as being great spellcasters prior. So I think the dog is craving some attention. We're almost done. Just bear with me. Don't let him distract you. So I mean, the reason they managed to get those words down so much is they just condensed some of the crap that was on the previous sheet, like the Children of the Night feature where you roll 2d4 creatures. No, that's all gone now. They can just influence all animals near their lair. Fantastic. Why didn't they think of that before? Who knows? I guess these things come to you. One of the most interesting things about the stat block and why they managed to get the words down so much, I think, is the fact they've just removed the charm feature from this particular creature. And instead, as a legendary action, this vampire can cast Beguile. The vampire casts command, requiring no spell components and using charisma. Spell save 18. The vampire can't take action again until the start of its next turn. But that's huge because you don't have to deal with all the role-playing annoyance of the charm condition, which I find quite challenging to run. You just go command. These things are just much more aggressive with how they do things, and I love that. Additionally, the Misty Escape feature is gone in favor of Shadow Escape, which again is just better. If it drops to 0 hit points outside its resting place, it just teleports there. That's it. It's paralyzed for an hour, then it regains a hit point. There's none of this Misty Escape, and it kind of flies away, and this is so much better for, like, you need to prepare if you're coming up against a creature like this. They just teleport. That's it. They're out. You got to go and find them again before they come for you. With its attacks, it has 2 unique attacks. It has a Grave Strike, which I guess isn't unique. It's just a necrotic and slashing mix, as well as Sickening Ray, which can use one of each turn. If it chooses to, it can make 2 attacks. You can choose between them. It's a ranged attack roll that deals necrotic damage, but also it does poison them. So Sickening Ray, a spell of the same name, doesn't quite do the same thing, but this, they just can do it an unlimited amount of times. It deals 16 damage on average and applies the poison condition with no save. Really strong. In addition to that, they've now added Hunger of Hadar, which of course is a spell, a level 5 version of Hunger of Hadar requiring no components, and this just recharges on a 5/6. They're really just leaning into the fact that these are just now prominent spellcasters. They leaned into the dark powers that gave them this power, and so now they're just much more adept at this. They are, I should mention, CR 15 as well. Another new feature, as a bonus action, they can use Sanguine Drain. This feature is a con save of 18, and one creature the vampire can see within 30 feet that isn't a construct or an undead just fails. They take 46 necrotic damage, and the target's hit point maximum is reduced by that amount. So before, this would come down to their bite and such. They've kind of changed that and gone for this Sanguine Drain instead. From range, it just makes it, I just love this stat block. It just makes them so much more threatening. They don't just rely on getting up close, grappling, biting, etc. I love this. That wraps up the Vampire Umbral Lord, and that does in fact wrap up this list. The top 10 monsters, I think, are the glow ups and the new things that have been thrown in there from the new monster manual. I really hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what you think. Leave your favorite monster from this list and your favorite, if I didn't include it, down below. I've been trying to pull together another top 10 to maybe do, but I couldn't find many more creatures that really jumped out at me. The new monster manual is amazing, but these are the ones that really jumped out. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Moose wants to say bye too. He's just staring out the window currently. You okay, bud? Yeah, he's fine. Goodbye, folks.